All right, so let's move into this next topic about this whole idea of these mandates that are being made. Okay, everybody has to be back in the office, and the problem with making mandates against for people. One of the articles that we read talked about how the leadership doesn't realize that when they enact a mandate, they often trigger a response to just oppose it. Like the reaction, it's a well studied behavior referred to as psychological reactance. And it's our resistance to something that threatens our behavioral freedoms. They're making these mandates, and people are just immediately, I don't like it.
Yeah, but with that, what is the flip side of that? What else would you do? You get a job, and when you take the job, you have to go to work. Like you don't have a choice there. So is it just because that we've had a little taste of remote work? And so when you try to, if you have something and you try to take it away, is that what kind of, and people say you have to give it up? Is that what triggers this
Well, I
psychological?
think it's the whole idea of it's this immediate mandate. It's not a choice. You don't have a choice. I guess your choice is, do you want to work here or not?
Mhm.
Which I would say that is a choice, but like these situations where it's like starting Monday, where
Mhm.
you're not even giving me any lead time to really decide, do I want to do this or not? It's again, they're saying it's a choice, but when you don't give anybody enough time to truly be like, do I want to do that or not? And if you do it, and I mentioned this when we talked about like the all the Dell workers showing up and they're not having enough parking space or office space because they didn't think, in my opinion, they probably didn't realize how many people were going to be like, oh, I'm going into the office. Where if they would have given more time to switch that, a lot of those people probably would have found different employment before it became like starting 3 months from today. Everybody needs to be back in the office 5 days a week. A lot of those people would have taken that 3 months to find different places to work. But most people can't just quit their job one day and hope they find another job at some point.
And I think with that, of that, what do you call it? The reactance, where you're like, you have to do this, and you're like, no. And I think that whole like quiet quitting kind of vibe with that, if you can force compliance, you definitely can, especially when there's like a power imbalance and you're like, yes, you will do this. And you're like, okay. But like you said, when they have choice and if they, especially certain people that have a certain skill set, and if there's a certain degree of autonomy that they wish to have, or if they've certain types of roles, ultimately, yes, employers can do as they want and have the mandates to come back, but the employees also have choice to find other employment. So that was an interesting thing. And I know that was depending on what the labor markets, you can feel that tension of who has, do the employers have all the power? Do the employees have any of the power? And always that kind of tension between those.
One of the things I'm going to be watching for is this a temporary return
Mhm.
to office? What could possibly be happening is they want to cut the workforce, right? So they're like, let's enact this, let's get the number down to here. And then once we get the number down to there, do they reintroduce it and be like, okay, we've reconsidered. We made a mistake saying everybody needed to come back to the office. We're now going to, on a case by case basis, determine people that can work hybrid and be in the office only certain days of the week, and possibly even people that can be fully remote. Because what's likely to happen, what you just said there, is that the people that have skills that are good, that do say, no, I want to work hybrid work, I want to work fully remote, they will go find other jobs that offer them what they want and they'll be able to get it. And then what you're left with is just the people that don't have as their skill set isn't as good as the people that left, and or now they're just angry. So now they're just like, it's apathetic workers where they're just, it's the whole quiet quitting thing where they're like, I'm going to I'm going to make sure I understand where all the lines are when it comes to being fired and not fired, and I'm going to walk right up to those lines but never over. So you're never going to have a way to actually fire me, but I'm not going to be a great employee either. And so those are the people that are going to be, they're going to get stuck with.
Yeah, because you think about the type of employee that might have initiative and has a great skill set, they're going to have more choice. They're going to have more choice to perhaps start their own ventures or to work for other teams and organizations that are going to appreciate that level of skill. Because if you think of somebody who has a wide skill set and understands collaboration and has agency and can self-manage. You want those type people on your team. You do not want those people, not that they're not going to hang around long and just be like mad and like a quiet quit. They're going to they'll take a beat, but then they'll figure out what makes most sense for them.
Yeah, and so I thought that was interesting as well with the LinkedIn poll about would a mandatory increase in office days, for example, 4 to 5 days, influence your decision to stay or leave your company. 60% said they'd consider leaving their current job. Only 17% said they'd be comfortable with the change, and 23% said it depends on the flexibility there.
Yeah, and that was from October 2024, so that's just a few months ago. Yeah, that definitely. Because, like you said, and that's what I've also seen a couple of stories about. I think they're starting to be really curious about if you do retract or you do force like the return to office. And right now, we're still in the beginnings of a lot of those pushes. So it'll be interesting. Maybe we check back in later this year to see which employees did leave.
Mhm. So I think we got one more point here to talk about before we wrap things up.
Okay.